whether we like them or we do not like them.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
Yeah, a place where if something does happen, you're able to like leave really easily or not be surrounded in the center.
And if that sounds exciting and you want to be a part of it and you understand the culture.
It is a thing where, as a female, you always, like, I feel like I'm tough. I was telling you, I like genuinely feel like I'm tough.
Yeah. Welcome back to your favorite podcast on the planet, Realty Talk Podcast. I have got my fearless confidant and our fearless leader, CEO, and founder of Innovate Realty, Suzanne Sini, to my side. We have some really exciting guests today to talk through really interesting topics. So
We do.
I'll let you do the intro.
Yes, we have Tracy and Corey today. So Corey is a retired Secret Service agent. So we're really excited to jump in. He and his wife, Tracy, recently started a company that we're going to talk a lot about. And, in real estate, it's really important for protection and safety. So it really matches exactly what I see in my day-to-day. And I thought it would be really valuable to bring them on and chat a little bit.
Awesome. So
We're
where are you
excited
both?
to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So where are you both from?
So I'm originally from Northern California, so I would refer to myself as a NorCal kid originally, right? But obviously live here in Southern California now, so part of SoCal.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how about you, Corey?
I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, and I went to school out here in Orange County, and I'm back here at the OC now.
All right.
UCI
Not a
or-
bad
I went
place.
to UC Irvine, yes.
Oh, wow.
Many years ago.
What did you study?
Economics.
Okay.
Interesting. Wow.
So how did you end up in the Secret Service studying economics?
When I was a kid, I always wanted to go to Wall Street. And so I went to Irvine, studied economics, and I was a banker for a number of years. And then one of the ladies I was working with, she's like, "You don't look very happy here in banking. Why don't you go talk to my husband? He's a special agent with U.S. Customs."
Oh, wow.
So I went and I did that for a short time, but it wasn't my cup of tea. And then I went back to what I knew, which was banking and investing and whatnot. So I did that for a little bit, spent a little time at Countrywide, my previous life, and then 9/11 hit. And that's when I did some soul searching, and it came down to the U.S. Secret Service, or LAPD, and Secret Service picking up first. 20 odd years later,
Here we are.
here we are.
So you served for 20 years.
Over 20 years with the Secret Service, yes.
Wow. Yeah, so it's kind of an
Make
interesting...
it sound like a death sentence, like 20 years.
No, I mean, that's a long time to do anything, right? You do
Yeah,
one thing,
it
but-
is.
So on the banking side, were you an investment banker, or what were you focused in?
My first initial banks, I worked with some Japanese banks doing
cool.
international trade finance, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to work at Countrywide for a short little stint.
Yeah.
And then did some investing, did some trading and whatnot for a couple years, and then the dot bomb.
Yeah.
Reality check for most of us.
Yeah.
But it's all good. It worked out for the best.
Did you see that trade that, last year was all over the news, but the currency in Japan, have you heard of all this? They basically are below 0% interest for a period of time. And so a tremendous number of American bankers were going out and levering the heck out of lines in Japan and then investing back here for the arbitrage. But, I think a fair number of them got crushed in the last 3 months. Did you track all that and see?
We went to Japan about a year ago. We're going to go again. We utilize the arbitrage.
We definitely have to utilize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Came back with I think we bought like 5 suitcases.
Yeah.
No joke.
Unmarked suitcases, as I learned from the seminar. We'll talk about that.
These were like we talked about before too. If you're going to buy something, buy quality.
Yeah.
These were made in Japan, suitcases, whatnot, because I'm kind of like a nerd like that, right? If I'm going to buy something, I buy something.
He likes
nice.
luxury products.
I
He has this thing
full
for
disclosure,
luxury.
That's awesome.
Okay.
I do enjoy certain things. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he noticed right away when we were in the seminar. He was like, "Your Chanel purse, I was like, "Oh, that."
He's got thrilled
very
sisters,
observant.
too.
Yes.
He knows a lot about products. He knows a lot about products.
Yeah. Okay.
So what was the tie to Japan? Are you Japanese?
I am
Japanese
not. Tracy is part Japanese.
Oh,
I
okay.
studied Japanese in college, and I trained in Japanese style karate for a number of years.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So-
You guys are a perfect match. How did you meet?
We met through eHarmony. As he blushes, right?
We're officially sponsored by eHarmony. Use code RealtyTalk to get your 10% discount.
And married for 10 years, right?
For 10 years. And I didn't know what he did until I met him. And then I think he said something to the effect of like, I don't want to scare you. And I was like, what could this possibly mean? And then
Where are we going with
exactly,
this?
and then
Yeah.
he explained what he did. Because even when he posted on eHarmony, like we give a lot of advice around like be conscious of what you post and things like that. He didn't say what he did. He just said legal. So, or law or something like that. And so it was left to interpretation what the person does. I thought I was going out on a date with a lawyer, but okay.
Yeah.
You found someone very
I found
different.
something
Yeah.
very different. And obviously now we work together instead of being married together.
So walk me through the process of becoming a Secret Service agent. Like you can't just, it's not like you just raise your hand and put in an application. I mean, it's got to be pretty extensive, right? I mean,
What it was 20 odd years ago was a lot different from what it is today.
really?
When I turned in my application, just as a point of reference, I used a typewriter.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
It literally took me hours to type everything out because they want to know everything about you.
Right.
Where you were born, all the places you've lived, all the schools you've been to, and whatnot. It was a very extensive background investigation because of the nature of the work that we do involving, as a special agent, protecting the president,
Right.
VP, foreign heads of states, financial investigations, counterfeit currency, credit card fraud, bank fraud, ID theft. It's a mixture of both. My interview, as part of my panel interview, was with 3 individuals, 1 current boss and 2 old timers. And it was kind of adversarial by today's standards.
Sure.
It was good cop, bad cop.
Yep.
And then basically I told them, I'm like, look guys, you guys have been on the job 20 odd years each. I'm not going to sit here and just give you guys a bunch of BS. You like me, great. If you don't like me, I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And after that, they spoon-fed me all the answers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know what? These are guys that have been around the block.
Yep.
You just feed them a bunch of BS. They're going to call you out on it.
Sure.
So why don't you just be real and tell people what you really think and who you are? You like it, great. You don't, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
Peace
Yeah.
out. So that was the process, and going through the background checks and going through the academy and the polygraph.
How long does that take? Is it like 6 months? Is
Oh
it
my
a year?
gosh. Back then, it was totally different because it was really just old school. Like I said, I typed my application.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you made a mistake back then, you'd have to go back and try to fix it.
Oh, yeah.
One of
Type the whole thing over
Oh my
again.
gosh, it was just, it still gives me nightmares today.
White out. Yeah.
So my application process took like a year and a half.
Wow.
It was just a long process, and Uncle Sam was really not known for.
Speediness.
Yeah.
My name was on a shelf for like 6 odd months, and here I was like, oh my God, I got to do something with my life.
Sure.
I had a lot of pressure from family. Hey, dude, you got to get it together.
Yeah.
And I had one of my mentors in life, and he was the one kind of really responsible for me getting into the Secret Service and doing that. Yeah.
But I think what you're saying too, it's like the heart, right? Because you had to wait for this long, extensive period of time to get in, right?
You-
And are you still committed to like
Yeah.
wanting that role?
Yeah.
And then it's not just like only the passing a polygraph and interviews and getting in that way, but it's like you have to go to academy. So do you pass the
Right.
academy? So like there's all these different like layers, so to speak. So like I think serving, like when to your point, I think you said earlier, like service, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not just the 20 years, it's also
Right.
like do you want this position? Do
Yeah.
you want it bad enough? Like, where's your heart, right?
Yeah.
And to your point about, like, don't BS the person on the other side. I always joke, like, like they're trained as behavioralists. They're trained as interrogators. They watch behaviors. They watch
Right.
mannerisms. They watch what you say, right? So you really can't get past somebody like that.
Right.
Yeah.
If you do start messing around. I don't even know if you knew it at that point in time when you were interviewing. But I mean, think about it fundamentally.
That's how all interviews should be, though, right? Like, hey, here I
Yeah.
am. This is me.
That's a whole
I
other
use-
conversation, right?
I use this. I think interviews. Well, in a private sector, in our businesses, right? When I'm interviewing somebody, I tell people all the time, interviews are actually pretty worthless because in most scenarios, the person on the other side of the table is telling you what you want to hear because they want the position. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And so, what I say word for word is, I have no idea if we're going to work together. We're well together until we work together.
Yeah.
So if we could just create
True.
enough,
It's
absolutely.
totally
if
true.
we can just create the expectations properly, like if I can tell you exactly what I need, and you can tell me if that's a good fit for you or not. So I'm going to tell you all
And
the
be
reasons.
honest about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
I'm going
know
to tell
if it
you
works.
all the reasons you want to work here and all the reasons you don't want to work here. And if that sounds exciting and you want to be a part of it and you understand our culture, then the only thing I need to know is, are you a good culture fit? And then we're going to try it. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
100%.
yeah, it's kind
Or
of
can you
hard.
deliver? I always
Yeah.
say that to him. Like, can the person deliver, right?
Yeah,
What
action.
they said they could do in the interview, can they deliver after?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I have. So you're the second person that I've met that's been in the Secret Service. I swam with a kid in college. I won't say his name. He's serving now.
We'll
but-
talk about that later.
Yeah,
Where'd you go to college?
the University of Utah.
Okay, you.
Because there's
He's
only
going to
so
out
many,
him right now. You're going to out
There's only so many agents in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
agents,
So he-
right?
he-
So, like, they know each other.
Where was you
sometimes.
stationed?
Well, I don't know all the details. He was a maritime attorney out of Texas when he left college swimming for 5 or 6 years, and then he was recruited in because of one of the cases that he went to trial on. And so it was really interesting. But I mean, so after college swimming, I did a little bit of triathlon. I did some Ironman stuff.
Okay.
And he got super interested, and so we were talking 2-3 times a week. And then he calls me. We did Ironman Oceanside, the half Ironman. He calls me like a week later and he said, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able to talk to you anymore for a while." And
That's not dramatic.
it was really bizarre.
You got
I was
ghosted.
sitting.
You got ghosted.
Yeah.
It wasn't like maybe he wasn't in the service. He just ghosted.
I know.
Yeah, and I would see him every year. Like we go back to the like homecoming thing and whatever. He's like, "I'm not going to be coming to any of that. I'm not going to be able to talk to you like in detail." Because I was getting business advice too, some legal advice, and he's like, I'll talk to you later, basically.
All right.
And I was like, "What happened?" And then a year or two later, he's like, "Hey, I'm now in the service, and that's what during that process, this is what they asked me to do." I was like, "Oh my gosh." This was maybe 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know what he's doing. I don't know where he's at.
I can.
Now Corey's gonna go track him. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're done, I'll just call one of my boys and I'll look him up.
Yeah.
He'll let you know what he's
There's
doing.
a locator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about? Have you been on Air Force One?
Actually, I was on the Reagan detail.
Oh, you were.
Yes.
Oh, your favorite.
Yeah.
I was.
I don't know if I like the person, but I think like the politics were good. So
Mrs.
All right, so let me get this straight in it real fast. As an agent,
yeah.
whether we liked them or we did not like them, it
Yeah.
didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, your job's to protect,
We
right?
protect the office, right?
Right.
So I've been with all types of folks, right?
Yeah.
From left to right, to center, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Heads of states and folks that were labeled not very friendly to Uncle Sam and whatnot.
Sure.
But it didn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Our job was they came into our care
Yeah.
in one piece and they're going to leave in one piece. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you separate that?
It's
a
part of the
service.
job.
Yeah.
It's a service.
Whether you like them or not, it's like, hey, look, you have to do it.
Yeah.
If you can't handle it, then there's the door,
Right.
Yeah.
because that's what it entails.
Yeah.
That's it. There's There's no if, and, or buts. It's very cut and dry, very black and white.
Right.
What you do.
And even as a family, we say that, like, you have to maintain some level of neutrality. I mean, we have our opinions, like, when we talk about things or when we vote, right? Just like everybody else,
Church and state.
right?
Yeah.
But it's like you said, like, you got to separate it, and so we separate it. So we become very neutral, right? And it's also probably a little bit of old school, too, right? Like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk about, like, unless you know people first, right? And you know who the person is, then you learn from each other and you share your opinions and you get that really good, like, dialogue. But if you don't know each other, like, people are easy to judge or whatever. And for us, we've always said, like, you take a bullet for the person, right? Same thing with safety is a human being thing. It's not about, like, gender. It's not, I mean, it could be more gender specific, right? But it transcends cultures, countries, things like that. It's human beings need safety and security, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of look at it too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I bring things back to like a business setting, you know, in a lot of scenarios. But I think what you're defining is the difference between a good business and a great business and the culture. Because you brought it up in the interviewing process. Like, if somebody can do the thing, right? If their actions are good, you know, then generally they're a pretty decent employee or a team member. But I see that happen all the time in businesses that I've been a part of. I've been an entrepreneur for way too long. And every single time I've seen something break down, it's because the leader or the manager is managing through a relationship, not action, right? And so you separate relationships with action, and generally the outcome is positive. But, you know, that's a very gray line in the private sector, I think.
Well, and it goes back to what you said, mission, vision, and values, right?
Right.
His mission has been to serve, right? Like, that's how he got the 20 years. How does he see people? He sees about the life, right?
Yeah.
Who he's protecting, right? Just like similar to a business, right? What are your mission, vision, and values? The mission is around, like, people. Like, we want to help people stay safe, right?
Right.
And understand the fundamentals of what that entails, not just only from a defense standpoint, right? So it's sticking to your mission, vision, and values, and that's hard to do, like, even as individuals, but even for organizations and companies. Right?
What is the mission or vision, if you can share that, of the Secret Service? I mean, that's got to be defined, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got, I'll speak from as a special agent side of the house. We're mandated to protect POTUS, the president, the vice president, foreign heads of states, and then whatever high-level cabinet officials that the president would like us to protect. And we investigate financial crimes, counterfeit currency, credit card fraud, bank fraud, ID theft.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, like, the Secret Service actually started in 1865 to combat counterfeit currency. It wasn't until after 1901 that we were did the protection side of the house. So it was a little time period, but yeah.
He talks in we, right? He's retired, but you can tell, like, the mission is strong, right?
Yeah, but
it's
20
in
years,
there.
that's going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
part
like,
of you.
even now, like, some of the young guys, because I was in the training squad, so some of the young guys on the job, they still text me and
That's
ask
awesome.
me questions about stuff like that.
And
so,
now you're the old guy.
So I'm like the old guy.
the one that you referred to when you were interviewing. Like, you're the old
No,
guy.
You're that guy.
You're that guy.
Absolutely.
And this is more of a, like, detailed question about, you know, like a breakdown in that scenario. So what happened, like, when Trump got shot that day? I was in Spain. I thought this was fake. So I was in Pamplona. The next morning I was running with the Bulls. And I'm in this
That's
little,
an
like,
experience all itself.
it was awesome.
Oh.
But
Very gutsy, brother, man.
but I was in my hotel room, and hotels are really hard to get. So
Yeah.
have you been to Pamplona before?
No.
I heard it's amazing.
I just
though.
want
Like, I'd love
to detail,
visit.
like, the setting because in my head this was, like, so real. But I'm laying in bed, like, midnight or 12:30. The city of Pamplona has like 150 or 200,000 people or something like that that live there. And during that festival, it's like 9 days or 7 days, there's like 1.5 million people that are there. There's not 1.5 million hotel rooms. And so people are just, like, sleeping in parks and on the streets and all this stuff. And there's a full-on concert at like 12:30 or 1 a.m. And I'm supposed to get up at like 5, you know, clear state of mind to go and run with these Bulls. And
To
I'm
stay
getting,
alive.
yeah, and I'm getting blown up, like, Trump just got shot. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I must be in a dream. This seems odd. You know, but so is that, what happened there? Is that a breakdown of, because that would be Secret Service that would be detailed for that scenario, or are you able to share your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, a couple of different things. One, I wasn't there.
Sure.
Right?
It wouldn't have happened if you were.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a hard job.
This was really a tragedy that had happened and occurred, and unfortunately, somebody lost their life.
Sure.
So that's the sad thing that comes to it. In terms of the whole tactical perspective and whatnot, like I said, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, I didn't read all the findings.
Yeah.
There were some findings that came out recently. The Secret Service, anytime something like that would happen, they would call in the inspectors to come. And like I was telling you earlier, every protection assignment that we would have a debrief to find out what went right, what went wrong. And we're constantly learning
Yeah.
for whatever incident that happened. So like I said, I wasn't there when it happened. It was just terrible.
But in a typical assignment, Secret Service would they comb that area previously, or would they rely on local enforcement to do a lot of that?
It's a mixture of both, right?
Got it.
Obviously, Secret Service, we do not have, or the service doesn't have enough agents.
There's not enough resources, right? Yeah.
100%. It's not.
So the liaison with
So
Got
the
it.
Secret Service would marry up with the local assets.
Right.
So you're talking about
And
police or
with the
like
local
first
PDs.
responders, right? So you coordinate your local and
Yeah, so
federal.
you would
Yeah.
work with each other, stuff like that, and we would divvy up our responsibilities here. Like I said, I really don't want to get into too much of
Sure.
what all happened because I wasn't there. It's not fair
Yeah,
for me
yeah.
to look back, and there's plenty of folks out there that are going to point their fingers and this and that.
Sure.
But what a lot of people fail to realize is that
We're talking about people's
it-
lives.
it's just like what Tyson said, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get whacked in the face, and then
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all going to go bad.
Yeah.
So whatever was a breakdown in communication and whatnot, something bad went down, right?
Yeah.
And then the service has to learn from it and whatnot.
Sure.
It was a Secret Service event venue. So of course, they had a
There was a breakdown there somewhere.
somewhere between that local PDs and whatnot. Something happened,
Yeah.
and hopefully, hope and pray that it never happens again.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other perspective too, like I look at it from a civilian perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it's like we think of, and even as a business person, like you're always looking at case studies, what you learned from it, what you could have done different or better, right?
Yeah.
For us in business, like if we lose money, we can make money back. You lose a life, you can't get that life back.
forever.
Right.
And so the other thing too is like when we look at things in retrospect and we analyze it and evaluate it, we can always say what we could have done different because hindsight
Right.
is 20/20, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard when you're in the moment, like, and of course there's gunshots, right?
Yeah.
Like people panic, like to your
Yeah.
point, everything you plan and strategize, your fight or flight just went into response.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we're all human beings, and I'm not saying that as an excuse, but it's like the reality of a situation in any emergency, right? So it's easy for everyone else who wasn't there and is not part of it
Yeah.
to say something because unless we've experienced fight or flight or unless we've been there, right? When
Yeah.
we've had something tragic happen around us, like we really can't fully critique.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think like military has its perspectives where they're constantly in combat, they've experienced fight or flight, right? But you can't just shoot anybody in a civilian
Totally.
setting unlike you can in the military. I'm not saying the military is doing that, right? But you have certain
engagement's
rules. The
different.
engagement is
Yeah,
different
yeah.
in war and combat than it is in civilian
Yeah.
life, right?
There has to
And
be
there's-
surety, yeah.
There's so many things.
Right.
very
So
dynamic
no one can really
situation.
say what's right or wrong, whose fault it is. At the end of the day, like we say, as we say, like somebody died.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
everyone needs to remember is
Yeah.
that somebody died and it wasn't just somebody. People got hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
People experienced something traumatic
Right.
in there
Right.
that you never want to experience again, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even more importantly, like an individual. Thankfully, he didn't get assassinated, but he got shot in the ear. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want to get shot in the ear.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like the complexities of the situation, and I think in our compassion is really what's important to remember is that
Yeah.
humanity part of everything, right?
Yeah.
I have two more questions, Secret Service related.
Okay,
If
I
it's
know
okay.
you do because I want to transition
I
to
know.
what they're doing now, but I know you're really
Okay.
You're like, it's
This
so
is
funny.
this is an interesting. This is
he
a
knows
basic
what
one.
I'm going
All
for,
right.
and he's like, "But hold
This
on."
is a basic one. Were you ever in your service over 20 years? Were you ever in a scenario like that one? You don't have to tell the story, obviously, but
Maybe you don't want to share because then I'll get panicky and I don't know. No.
I was not involved in a shooting incident.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, we do investigations, right? Financial investigations. And we conduct search warrants and arrest warrants.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, I've been in situations where I've had to point my weapons at individuals or whatnot. And anytime you go into somebody's house, you don't know what to expect, right? Mm. And, those were some moments. Fortunately, I didn't have to hurt anybody, so I'm really grateful for that.
That's what we say, too. Like, even though it's like, it's exciting or like Hollywood-ish kind of thing. Like at the end of the day, like even for those in law enforcement, they don't want to have to, right? Like you don't want to have to use your weapon.
There's so much trauma that
you don't want to have to be responsible for that second decision making and like and if anything, no matter how often you've trained, you're trusting that training to overcome your own fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, that's what you're battling. Like it's. Like, I don't want his job. That's all I gotta say. I've always said that.
One more question. This is it. I've had this on my head. So do you think it would benefit the population of the U.S. if the JFK files are released or not? Or do you think it's a negative?
Oh my gosh, that's really complex.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I would love to see it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see what's in it. You know, as a person who likes history, I would like to see what's all in there. I don't know what all's in there.
Right.
I don't know if there's potential.
You wouldn't tell us if you did, though. Yeah.
I still have my security clearance, so that's why a lot of folks that, you know, we were talking earlier about some stuff, and it's kind of like, hey, look, who you hang out with and who you associate with is a reflection of who you are as a person, right? And you have to be really careful of what you do.
Yeah.
So I can't hang out with criminals? Because then
That's a good segue into your business.
He's letting me in. No, so as we mentioned, so I attended one of your seminars. Can you tell us a little bit, tell Paul a little bit about what you guys are doing, the motivation behind it, and what the plan is on the horizon?
Sure. So you attended one of the products that we just rolled out, which is called Safety Nest. And it's like, how can you keep like yourself, your family, and your home safe, but also your workplace, which has to do with lifestyle. And that's why we called it Safety Nest, because it's kind of like what the nest embodies. It's not just only like the home.
That's cool.
And the real vision around it was, how do we apply a lot of the kind of U.S. Secret Service principles or training that my husband has otherwise had into like civilian life. So by nature of me being with him for the last 15 years and married the last 10, there's obviously things we've talked about or things we share both in our conversations. And a lot of it has been around, you know, in the beginning it was him probably keeping me safe. Now it's like keeping the family safe, right? But a lot of it has been understanding those fundamentals of kind of around like prevention and avoidance and defense. Right? And over time, what I realized is I was just absorbing a lot of these skills and like knowledge and stuff, and I didn't realize that I was subconsciously applying it to my life in terms of what I notice or what I see or how I live my life, right? And I noticed too that it's not that we avoid certain things in terms of like, you know, not living our life, but the way that we look at things is how do you tactically approach something. So, you know, like we tend to avoid like larger based crowds, like, you know, a lot of large, huge events or parades and things like that. If we do go, it's like understanding where's your tactical advantage to really be in a place where if something does happen, you're able to like leave really easily or not be surrounded in the center of those events where somebody who wants to create harm or harm the most people would otherwise do something, right? And so I realize like I've developed this mindset over time as a civilian, which is how law enforcement refers to the rest of us that are not in law enforcement. And that mindset and really wanting to bring those same skills and knowledge and share what it is that not only he's taught me, but also what I've learned through observation and living my life and being able to kind of translate that. I always say like there's a code you guys have that we don't always understand certain words like situational awareness or insider threat. There's all these different terminologies, but they apply to our everyday life. We just need to understand how it applies and what we can do differently. And so my inspiration was really for women and children, and that's probably because of like the stage of life that I'm in. But I also know as a working mom, I travel a lot by myself, and I travel with friends, or I travel, I've always lived in New York City by myself. I mean, as a female, you are expected to go anywhere and different places, and it's a really critical thing that I've explained to a lot of people. From the day you're born, your mom is usually trying to tell you like how to stay safe, what you should do, what you should be aware of, and that's really different for our male counterparts in a lot of ways.
Totally. It really resonated with me when I was at the seminar, because there are so many situations that one thing that you guys spoke about was just, not putting yourself in situations. He brought up road rage. And I'm not really.
How do you not do that?
Yeah, I'm not a big it takes a lot for me to get there. But it is a thing where, as a female, you always I feel like I'm tough. I was telling him I genuinely feel like I'm tough.
Yeah.
But you laugh at that because
no. I think you are.
I am not tough. No, I am not tough. I should not be getting in anyone's face. I shouldn't be. Yeah, if someone is approaching me in a threatening way, I should back away from that versus me being a little fired up. And
I'm not trained the way he is, right? But I actually am surrounded by a lot of tough women. My mother was really tough. My wife's tough. I think you're tough. But I think a lot of that is just your mentality, right?
Yeah.
So physically,
that
you're not going to win that fight.
Yeah.
But how do you avoid road rage? If you just
I'll
accidentally turn lanes.
Contextualize it, because he was actually referring to me, because and we were fine using this example, I'm 5 feet 2 inches, 120 pounds, just so the audience knows size wise, right? But when somebody's on my bumper, when they're really close, it really bothers me. I'm just get off, right?
Right.
And so when I express myself, it's more tactically, I'm going to slow down on purpose, or I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit.
You don't just move over and let him pass?
No, right? So to your point, right? So, and I'm happy to, right? To your point. So what he's talking about is and rightfully so, he's why wouldn't you just avoid it? Get out of the way. Why wouldn't you just he's how do you know there's not a 300-pound guy or 200, twice my size, right, in the car behind you, gets upset, has a weapon in his car, whatever, and now is going to escalate the situation.
I think,
or right. So what we don't realize is that situations can escalate out of our control.
Yeah.
And we're not able to always easily anticipate that when we're emotionally charged. And so to your point, and the reason we use this example is because it's a perfect example where I'm driving along and I get upset really easily because somebody's just right up against me, and you want to respond in a certain way. And he's using that as an example to say you have to pause and just think about it a little bit, which is hard to do, and just avoid the situation because you can't easily anticipate everything. But if things do escalate out of control, then all of a sudden you're in the defense mode, which you don't have time. It's life or death right at that point. So you just created a whole nother situation.
Even with training, you never know what that's going to be like too, right? Because I think humans make decisions from only two pathways. They're I think scientifically the brain, it's proven that you make decisions from passion or desire or fear, right? And that dates back to caveman days, if you believe in that, right? And so in that scenario specifically, I talk about this with my wife all the time. Okay, just get over.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get over and you let that happen and you engage in that scenario, you're actually letting the other person's actions steal your power for the day. It's not about being in a tactically better scenario, at least from my vantage point. It's just be happy. Because if you don't get over...
That's exactly what it is, right? So this is a man who's telling me, who's in law enforcement for 20 years, right? Secret Service agent, and he's telling me avoid the situation. So what is that? So to the signal to me, right, as a layperson is if this guy who's been equipped, trained, or whatever is saying you try to avoid the situations you can to increase your chances of living and being safe and being joyful, then why not do it, right? And that's the biggest,
the best.
That's the biggest takeaway, right? Is
that's
live
why
your
it
life
resonated
with joy
with me.
and peace, and why take that on? And so it's funny though that you mentioned they're funny, but I use that loosely, right? But the road rage incident. Yeah. But that's why we used it and personalized it because I was the one that we were talking about this situation with.
Right.
So I think there's a practical question you can ask in those scenarios. So I consider myself a dumb entrepreneur with a lot of energy. And so I've sought coaching you know, because I've been in positions where I have large businesses and I'm not equipped to run some of those businesses, is what I felt in the moment. So I had a CEO coach early on. I was in my early 20s. We had 300 or 400 employees at the time. And there were things like that might pop up that would be frustrating or annoying. And then if you're frustrated or annoyed, by definition, your brain is going to make a worse decision. And so the statement is, what am I feeling and why? What am I feeling and why? In that scenario, what am I feeling? The guy's on my bumper and annoys the shit out of me.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going through your head.
And why am I feeling that?
Exactly.
It's because he's on my bumper.
Yeah.
The solution is move over. Or I don't know what this, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But then all of that gets erased if you can honestly answer what am I feeling and why. And sometimes the why question is actually really complicated, and it opens up insecurities about yourself versus the actual thing that's taking place.
Well, so to that point, I think if you were to analyze it, like when I'm 5 feet 2 inches, I'm pretty small, I'm petite.
Right.
A lot of people easily just stand next to me and crowd over me.
Right.
Or
inadvertently, right?
Inadvertently. Like if I wear flats too, it's even worse, right? But even on planes, because I'm small, it's like you can take the seat in the back, scrunched in the corner, and so there's a social aspect of it too. So I think to your point, why would it? You joke about the Chihuahua thing, but I think it's more just a social. It is by mechanism of I don't like people close to me.
Yeah.
And then when somebody's on, so to your point, you're right. Even when I'm socially around people, I don't like being close to people because everyone feels like a wall to me. Right.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So there's a social, there's a defense there that's really associated with maybe even female safety and stuff it's triggering that, right? But I think you brought up a really good point. What are the insecurities? What are the triggers, conscious or subconscious, that really cause us to act in a certain way? Because I think that's really important to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. So you guys talked about the reason why you're doing this. You talked about your children. Share a little bit with our listeners about what this is looking like now and what is on the path long term.
So right now it's live in person and local. We call it the friends and family round, right? Because we can ask a lot of questions and get a lot of feedback, and then it's really being able to scale that and replicate that in terms of in-person communities throughout the country or the world, right? That's the bigger picture. But then more importantly, it's being able to create what I call geographic disbursement, where it's creating the subscription. So we've just started that in terms of being able to bring it to people where maybe they can't come in person or they don't have the time or there's other priorities, right? We still want to make sure that the information is getting to them in the way that they need to receive it. In what I call short bites. So we've just recently set up the subscription, and then we're going to have webinars so that individuals can join and ask questions and really, what I like to say, kind of blow it up, but really get the information out there to folks. Because I think oftentimes we focus so much on defense, take self-defense classes or dial 911 if something bad happens.
Yeah, I thought I was taking a self-defense class that day, just so you know. I was ready. I mean, I told him I was going to a self-defense class. That's what I thought I was doing. Right, so
that's what we easily think of, right?
Yeah.
We don't think about the things that come before that tactically in ways of how we prepare our home, how we prepare our life, what do we do? And that's really where, if you think about the U.S. Secret Service and what they do, there's so much preparation that goes on before somebody comes and visits or before something happens. And it's that tactical type of thinking that we want to bring to people in their lives.
It's cool the way you're doing it, too, because you've applied it for 20 years in a very, very serious application, right? And the relationship between the two of you, you have this, civilian perspective, but it's a nice bridge because the delivery, can come across in a way where it's teachable and coachable.
It's relatable. And that's why, when he talked about you with your road rage, that's why I was able to be no, you're right.
Exactly.
That's,
and as a female too. And I relate to you because as an entrepreneur and as a business person, it's how do you get this in the hands of the most number of people as quick as possible in a way that it's not necessarily you always had to focus on defense. Right. And I always joke, as an individual who's petite in size, I'm not going to become a G.I. Jane. I'm not going to win the physical battle. I can try, but, in terms of preparation, but really it's going to be the mentality and how you see situations, avoid them or prevent something from happening. That's my advantage. Yeah. So that I stay safe and so that my kids stay safe.
How do you train these thoughts with like community, because as you're talking about this, there's a statistic that is at the front of my mind. So Tom Tate used to be the mayor of Anaheim, and I listened to him speak at an event, and it was really interesting. He was talking about natural disasters in the city of Anaheim, which was I think it's the second or third largest city in California. For every emergency responder, so I think that's police, National Guard, firemen, ambulance, there are 40,000 residents that we know of, right?
Oh.
So in the event that there's a natural disaster, you're kind of fucked. Mm-hmm. And it's all about your community, like in the people that you know. So is there an application or a setting for what you guys are teaching where it's about like your neighborhood, not necessarily just you and your house? Like how do you create a community around that and get the community involved in a subscription to make the whole neighborhood safe?
Well, the way
without like a guard and like a gate and all that stuff.
Well, it's kind of like it starts with the individual, right? First, but then it's collective individuals, right? So to your point, your proximity to other people you interact with, your friends, your network, your neighbors, your community, right? Your HOA, right?
Yeah.
So so there's like a spider effect. Like when you share it with one person, person shares it with another person or 5 other people, right? And so now you're creating like, that's what activism or, community is.
Yeah.
But I say it's bigger than that because he calls me crazy sometimes, but I say like, I want to create a movement.
Yeah.
And it's a movement of individuals who value their safety and their security and want to take responsibility for it themselves and not rely on others.
Right.
And by doing that, you're partnering with others. And at the same time, all of you in tandem are now learning how you partner with law enforcement and others. Because like to your point, there are not enough emergency responders and first responders to be everywhere at every point in time when something is going to happen, right? And so that timing is critical. When something bad happens to you, it's going to take at least a drive of someone in a car to get to you, right?
Yeah.
That's
Even
10,
if they
15
can
minutes,
get there.
20, 30. I mean, it could be any length of time. It's an X, right? Like
Right.
we don't know how many minutes or hours or whatever, right? And so it's like from that perspective, you have to know how to take care of yourself.
Right.
But you want to avoid like as many traumatic, bad things that can happen to you as possible because no one wants to go through that alone, right? So it doesn't even have to do with personal property or anything like that. It's just like, how do you stay safe?
So I have a question because I felt that it's, there's kind of a fine line between living in a state of fear and living in like a realistic place where, things could happen. I felt that, some women that I heard or some people that I've talked to, like kind of go across that line and it turns into something else where it's paranoia and so anxiety.
Right?
So
Yep.
how do you balance that where it's, you're in a healthy place where, you have these precautions, but it's not consuming your life?
So I like to say it's information, right? It's not, no one's going to tell you, like our position, you don't tell people how to live, right? You don't tell them what they can and can't do. It's not a set of rules, right? But it's like information or social education allows you to make different decisions. So I think during the session, we used the example of like when we went to Thailand, right? And we're like at the airport and they declare a state of emergency, right? And the conversation that he and I had really quickly was like, do we go or not go? And that was before kids, before family. It was just him and I think we were dating, so we weren't even married to each other, right?
Yeah.
But it's like the conversation we had about like, do we get on the plane or do we stay, right? Has a lot to do probably with like our own risk tolerance, like what makes us feel comfortable, right? And number 2, what would we do if A, B, C happens, knowing that there's a declared state of emergency, right?
Right.
And obviously at the time, because he was still working too, it was slightly different where it's like, we're going and he's still working, the government still has to keep track of him, right? So we have a different type of level of resources, I guess you could put it that way. But we talk about it today, like what would we do differently? How do you recreate that same level of resources and information, right? And he shared in the last session, like make sure you know where your U.S. Embassy is, right?
Yeah.
Like make sure make sure you've talked to people on the ground. I mean, I think I said I want to go to a safari and I want to take the kids, right, in Africa. And so he and I are like strategically researching and tactically understanding like what do we need to do to properly prepare. So again, like I said, it's not saying like don't do this, it's having the right judgment to know whether or not that decision makes sense. And in this particular case, we actually decided not to go to Africa right now because of some things that we discovered, and we were like, we're not comfortable with that.
Sure. Yeah.
So therefore, we're not going to go. But it doesn't mean that we won't ever go, right?
Right.
It's about defining the risk profile, essentially.
Yeah, and deciding how you're going to approach it. If something bad does happen, do you have a plan in place, or are you just
Right.
like, oh, well, we're just going to roll the dice and
Yeah.
something bad
Hope it
happens,
works out.
and, like, hope it
Fingers
exactly,
crossed.
like,
Hope is not a strategy.
exactly, just hope it. So it's like everything we do in life, whether or not we're planning financially, or it's the same, but we have to make it more, for lack of a better word right now, like user friendly, because we don't typically talk a lot about these things, like
Right.
from a safety and security standpoint.
Right.
So we kind of put it off or set it aside and don't give it a lot of thought. But if we did, like, how much safer or better? And
You're actually going to feel safer if you're
and you feel more
communicating and
assured. So the
researching,
anxiety you're facing is because we don't know what to do. The fear
Right.
is from, like, I don't know what I do, or
Yeah.
like
Lack
I
of
read all this
clarity,
stuff in
yeah.
the news,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to respond to it or how I can prevent it.
That makes sense.
Versus by being able to have the education and information, like,
I was going to say that. So I think actually fear in and of itself is just the unknown, right? Because something
what you
that
can't control, right? Like,
Yeah.
somebody breaks into your home, right? I've got cameras, I got alarms, like, that should be good enough, but what if it's not, right?
Right.
And then your head
Yeah.
takes you down like 500 different paths, versus we're saying, like, here are different ways to strategically think about all the tools and resources to fortify your home, or what Corey likes to say is he refers to it as speed bumps. Like, how do you
Slow
protect,
down,
how
yeah.
do you slow down and prevent your home from being chosen, hopefully, by doing different things, and therefore, like, the chances, it's a probability game, right? Like, probability.
To answer your question earlier, like we spoke about initially, look, it's through education and just being aware of things.
Yeah.
That will give you a certain sense of freedom. There's certain things, obviously, I always try to tell her, nothing good happens after midnight. Okay? Like,
Yeah.
you just go look at the stats or whatnot.
100%.
How many folks get involved into accidents and stuff after 2 o'clock, after 2 a.m. or whatnot, right? So,
just happened 2 nights ago on the 405 on Harbor, right?
there's like bad
7-car
stuff that
pilot.
happens. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like real stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the road rages. We had one of the ladies who attended that thing with you. She actually sat right next to you, right? Some guy came by and gave her the bird just
Yeah.
a couple of days afterwards. She said normally she would go and escalate it and do this and that. She said after talking about it, stuff like, dude, don't do that.
Yeah.
The risk reward, right?
Yeah,
You're
not
a
worth
money
it.
guy, right? You don't want to do that kind of stuff. You folks have a lot to lose, and you don't know who you're dealing with.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the unknown element.
Okay.
And that's the thing too, especially when pertaining to real estate. Well, whatever question you may have, but since there's a lot of women in
Yeah.
the industry, in the field, even though you're in really good shape or whatnot, it's not realistic for you
No,
to want to
it
go
doesn't
and
matter.
get involved in an altercation with another person unless
Yeah.
you're highly trained or whatnot. Look, so having said all that stuff, have the partner system, have the buddy system.
Yeah.
Right? Even for us, that when we go, I mean, back in the day, I'd go and interview an individual who made threats against POTUS or whatnot. I'd bring a partner with me.
Yeah.
Certain things.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
It's the
even
same
though I
thing.
understand like your real estate, you guys have, okay, open houses, what time to what time, what time. But letting everybody know where you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? I had a friend of mine, she's a female realtor. She went into a location late at night all by herself.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to contact her boyfriend, he wasn't available. Contact her son, he wasn't available. She went there. She ran into some individual that made her feel really uneasy.
Yeah.
So please don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Our stuff is about if you can prevent and avoid, then let's do that.
Yeah.
If you get into a physical altercation, then it could end up really bad.
Yeah.
I'm just not saying you, but even
Yeah, yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
But
Anybody, right? So you don't want to have to do that. If you can just avoid the situation altogether,
Yeah.
let's do that.
But the other perspective is like, I mean, I know this as a female, there's things that I need to do that I can't always have a buddy or a guy with me or a friend with me, right? And so it's thinking tactically about it. Like for me, I'm like, if something happens, what am I going to do? And it's thinking like 3 steps down from there to be like, what would I do? And by thinking about that in advance, it makes me feel better. So I think like in the case that you used where the individual had to go to the open house, right? Maybe there was no one that could go there or whatever else with her, right? She still has to go,
that's what
right?
you have to do, right?
And so if anything, it's thinking tactically about like, okay, do you have exits? Or is it only one single entry and now you're trapped in a certain location, right? So it's looking at other things, right? And the same thing we talk about like home assessments, like when people, they always go to cameras and they go to like alarms, right? But what other things can you do to change, like maybe you're building your house, right? And you should look at maybe how the house is being laid out and the design of the house, right? Or you want to look at materials, like what materials, like what type of glass, is it reinforced or not, right? Or maybe you have too much glass in your house and that makes for easier access, right? So it's thinking more tactically about it. And I think, you know, the session you attended, I joked, but it's true. I was like, how do you think like a criminal? Like, if you can think like a criminal, now you know how to think differently about like how you approach things.
Right.
And that's what I learned from, I don't know if he knows this, but that's what I basically learned is how to think like a criminal.
So you guys, Corey, you brought up a really great, you know, word that I want to focus on. You said partner, right? So you guys are partners in business and life. Walk us through, I mean, you guys have launched a business, which is awesome. You know, congratulations on that and everything you guys are doing. Walk us through a moment where you guys had to come together and, you know, overcome adversity, whether that's personal and business. You know, how do you guys do that?
Every day,
Well, that's the truth.
That's called marriage. Yeah.
That's marriage,
true.
but then that's when you're like working together too, right?
And then, you know, the really difficult thing is just like dealing with people, right? Learning your boundaries, staying in your lane. Tracy went to Vanderbilt, and she worked at Pricewaterhouse for a number of years, Vandy for business school. So she's got the business side. I was with Uncle Sam. I've been institutionalized, right, for 20-odd years. It's a different type of skill set. Certain things I don't know about, then she can handle. Other stuff, I can do it. Talking in front of people. I'm used to dealing with guys, right? Now I'm talking with professionals, professional women. So I have to make sure that I don't say anything crazy to offend anybody, obviously, because I don't want that to happen. But like we talked about before, the company and whatnot, just to piggyback a little bit too, if I can help save a life through certain tips or whatnot, then it's, to me, this journey's been all worth it to me. I mean, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed to be working with Uncle Sam and having all that stuff, and if we can share that and help it out with people, the civilian sector, that's awesome. It's my way of still giving back to the community and whatnot, and that's really important.
But we joke about like adversity being daily, but I think like that team is like critical, right? Even in the marriage as well as the business, right? Like he's the expert, and it's like I'll take what he's saying and I'll like translate it, is what I like to say, right? But even if you think about like personal adversity, like we've been through a lot of death in our lives, and you know, in terms of like losing people in our lives, and there's an aspect of resilience that comes out of that, right? But there's also an aspect of reflection, which is like gives contribution to like how much more valuable life is. And from that perspective, I think that's what fuels us in terms of like when he says we want to save a life, or that safety is for everyone, for every human being. Part of the passion was just understanding that usually it's the ultra wealthy that hire him to protect them, right? But what about everyone else that doesn't have the means to like pay to have someone protect you, right?
Yeah.
And that's really like understanding that component was like, this is something that skill set and experience and stuff can be shared with everyone. And that was also something that it's like life legacy, like what can we leave behind that's bigger than ourselves? This is it.
Yeah, I love that.
So, real estate story. We got to wrap. What can you tell us about a fun, interesting, or terrible real estate focused story? We're a single family real estate platform, right? So we ask people, our guests, walk us through something you guys did together, whether it's an investment or whether it's a house you bought or built, or what's a fun real estate story you can share?
You know, I'll share something real fast. our realtor, the person we bought our place here in Newport, when I first met him, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a jerk.
It wasn't Franco.
I wasn't Agent F.
Agent M? Okay, very
No,
okay.
no. Franco, that dude is just badass. That guy, he's amazing. No, this is our realtor. He's this old, grumpy old dude,
Yeah.
and he was like, I'd call him up. I said, Tracy, dude, the guy hasn't even returned my phone call.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Are we gonna get this place or not? Like, I called him up, he like blow me off, and hey, did we submit our offer or whatnot? Fast forward today, 10 plus years later, you actually saw him.
He was sitting in the class.
Oh, was
We
he?
ended up becoming friends afterwards.
And he's been talking
so
over the
funny.
last 10
And
years.
it turns out like he's just like, that's just his exterior.
Yeah.
Sure.
He's just got this mean,
Yeah.
rough exterior.
He's not me.
But he's such a really nice guy.
We're sending him the link for this
I love
podcast
it.
for sure.
And then, yeah, definitely,
Well, he sounds like a really terrible guy if he's not at Innovate.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not
I'm
our
joking.
program.
But I think
I'm
like,
joking.
life kind of goes full circle. 'Cause, I
Yeah.
mean, he started this by saying like not only that example, like he used to work for Countrywide.
Yeah.
back
Oh,
in the
sure.
day.
Yeah.
And then like we always like real estate in terms of like investing and doing stuff, but it's also full circle too because what we are talking about, what we did that day was aside from protecting your family or yourself, right? It's how do you protect your home?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just only like technical specifications or put better cameras or anything like that, but it was more in depth, right? Which is the baseline for like people being able to consider the option of doing a home threat and vulnerability assessment. Like
Right.
people don't really realize that they can do that or have someone do that.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's essentially someone who walks through your home or the grounds of your home and says like, hey, you have like gaps here in your security protocols, whether or not your camera's facing the wrong way, whatever, things that they notice as an expert, right? And being able to walk your home and provide you with solutions for what you can do differently. And we did this as an example for one of our friends who was having, a lot of people going through their home for a home tour. And it was things like, hey, you want to put like these locks at the bottom of your sliding doors because your kid could essentially open it and go outside. I mean, it was safety and security holistically,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think people really realize that that's something that can be done,
Right.
right? But it's literally what they do for like the individuals they protect when they protect their homes. They go through the same similar type process to determine what
Right.
kind of materials need to get changed out, where do cameras need to get replaced or positioned differently, whatever it may be, right?
Right.
And so that's something that like we're excited about, but it's also just like how life kind of
Yeah.
comes full circle
Totally.
and overlaps and kind of comes back around. And
Yeah.
so
Always comes
it's
back to real
exciting.
estate.
It comes
What
back-
I learned today is hire a great agent, hire a great interior designer, and hire a great interior protection agency.
Yeah. There you go.
And that's Tracy
come
and
to a
Corey.
class.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think it's our time. I just, thank you so much for sharing. I know, there's stuff that I probably could go for 3 hours and ask you more questions.
He's like, I still have more questions.
Yeah, but no, it was so sweet of you guys to join
Yeah.
us.
for having
Thank
us
you.
over.
Of course.
Really
Yes.
enjoyed it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
what you guys are
This
doing
is fun.
what you guys are doing is awesome. What I would say, in our brokerage, we have 175 agents. I don't know the percentage, but it's predominantly women. And knowing that we have a resource to protect them and have them feel safe. When we run our businesses, we have two types of customers. We have internal customers, which are our agents or employees, and external customers. And actually, external customers, not that they don't matter, but it's kind of irrelevant what their experience is like because your internal customer, if they're handled properly, will take care of the external
Oh, for
customer,
sure.
right? And so it's an awesome resource for us to have, here locally to be able to arm our agents and make sure that they feel safe in those environments that can be kind of tricky. So I just appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for being
Yeah, and
here.
congratulations on your
Means a
business.
lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very excited.
All right, that is it. Anything else you want to add?
No, we conquered it. Yeah.
I guess the other thing I would say is if you're coming to an open house and one of our agents is there, be ready.
They'll be
You
ready,
don't know
so.
what you're getting yourself into. So thank you very much for joining. We're going to share all of your details about how to reach you and your business. Hit subscribe, send to all your friends and family, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.